So this course was started largely because of input we received from the accounting firms that hire our students. Anywhere from the large international accounting firms all the way down to small local firms, valuation is becoming an increasingly important part of the revenue stream. And let's face it, accountants should understand how to value assets, liabilities, and businesses. So there's clearly a demand. Now, if you look at the traditional valuation professional, they often have econ backgrounds, MBAs, maybe finance backgrounds, but the type of work they do overlaps into some of the more traditional accounting service lines, which is probably why I've been told the ideal valuation professional is actually an accountant with a few years' experience and some fundamental understanding of valuation concepts. That's an issue with our students who have very little exposure to finance. So my goals were somewhat modest for this class: get them a reasonable valuation skill set and ensure that they could speak the same language as valuation professionals by the time they were done. But this wasn't going to be so easy in our MAcc program because we have three distinct tracks: tax, audit, and systems. And it's kind of well known in our group that these tracks don't play so well together. So creating a mutually agreeable syllabus certainly was going to be a challenge for me. Now, I oriented the class around a textbook written by an NYU finance professor by the name of Aswath Damodaran, kind of well known in the valuation space as a researcher and also a teacher. But I also supplemented that text with some other resources, some portholes, some websites that I used for content, for different ways to deliver the material, just to mix things up for the students and hopefully make it seem a little bit more relevant. It didn't take long to realize that the students weren't really reading the textbook, so I had to supplement some of the more complicated areas with YouTube videos that I embedded directly into our Blackboard. I actually found a wealth of information out there. Marketplace.org, Money Week, the Khan Academy, people have probably used before. These are really great resources and got our students up to speed. Now, this is a real simple discounted cash flow model. I bet you didn't think there'd be math here today, right? Believe it or not, this was the essence of our course, and I told the students as much on day one. And you'd be amazed at how long you can take in a semester unpacking and understanding just these three simple components. But I got to hand it to my students. You know, we got comfortable with this, and it didn't take us long to graduate towards some more complicated models, realistic models, stuff you'd actually see a valuation professional using. The cool thing about this, there's some overlap with capital markets PhD seminars, so real synergies with our doctoral teaching and our education, which was kind of neat for me to be able to do. Your typical day, I would lecture from outlines I had prepared for the students, not dressed up as Darth Vader, obviously. And if there was time, we would do some group-based activities, not always time, where the students would break out and put together some sort of Excel-based deliverable they'd have to return to me. Most of those group-based activities revolved around publicly traded companies that the students selected at the beginning of the semester and followed throughout the semester. I found Yahoo Finance was a great resource for this applied portion of my class. It's free to access. It has a wealth of information, including historical stock prices, indices, analyst forecasts, you name it. Now, I also wanted the students to be able to do ordinary least squares regressions in Excel, basic statistical technique to understand the relation in financial variables. Here again, I found YouTube super helpful to set the stage, get some basic terminology down, get some basic data manipulation down. Then once we got to class, I brought in some real data on a particularly strong and predictable linear relation. We graphed that relation in a scatter plot to get a visual representation of the relation, and then we took it a step further and executed an Excel correlation function to get a mathematical representation. Now, with a scatter plot in Excel, you can actually layer in a trend line to get the equation, the linear equation that defines that relation. Now, the cool thing about that is if you just have two variables like we have here, that trend line equation is actually the ordinary least squares regression line. And you can prove that by executing an OLS in Excel and comparing that output to your trend line to bring it all together. Now, this slide is to illustrate some unexpected places I encountered challenges. Stock returns, the increase or decrease in stock price in percentage terms. Wouldn't you know it, many of my students didn't know how to calculate a return, and they didn't even know what it was. But rest assured, everybody knows how to do it now. So how'd the semester go? So not all of the feedback was negative, but there was some. One student said, "I don't know what we learned or how it was remotely relevant to accounting." Another said, "While it did stretch my thinking, it was irrelevant to my future career and a complete waste of my time." High praise. So in retrospect, I think a lot of this negative criticism arises from an expectations gap, as is probably pretty common teaching a new class for the first time. I expected too much of the students. They were probably hoping for a little bit less. You know, given the nature of the material, exams could have been maybe not as tough as I had originally designed them, and maybe it would have been better to spend more time on application, less time with me lecturing. For our group, another, I think, impediment to a smooth first year is the CPA exam. We've incorporated this formally, the review of the CPA exam, into our curriculum, which I think is a good thing, but it's distracting for some of our students. So a rigorous course like mine that's not seen as all that relevant to the CPA exam caused some frustration. But I'm committed to getting everybody excited, not just some students excited. I've been removing content to make things more manageable this year relative to last year, simplifying where possible, and doing everything I can to make sure the course seems relevant to their future careers. Believe it or not, after this experience last fall, I had to ramp up to teach a second valuation class to our audit track students, right? So think about this, 5 weeks, hour and a half each day to a bunch of students that just want to start collecting a paycheck. And by this time in our program, 98% of our students have a job and they're ready to go. But I was unfazed. I oriented the class around case studies and actual deliverables you'd see from valuation professionals. I covered these topics you see on the slide because I was told that these are the places new audit associates are likely to encounter the work done by valuation professionals early on in their career. And I have to say the summer went pretty well, and this fall things seem to be going a lot better. Clearly, I've been doing some learning. Whether the students have remains to be seen. Thank you very much.